Let's take some questions.
All right, we got questions. We have a lot of questions. Let's start with I believe a couple of related questions. One from McDowell says, "Are we limited to 4 blocks in the page?"
No, not at all.
And then also, can we create a child template that might not have a sidebar? So,
Yes. You could certainly make this a 1-column layout. You could make this a 5-column layout, either by adding or subtracting divs. And with a lot of this predetermined PHP content, if you're careful and you know what you're doing, you can strip it away. For example, the default appearance in your login screen is this meta information, site admin, login, email. That appears in the sidebar. If I just delete the PHP that controls that, I'm not going to break the functionality of the site, but that will no longer be visible. Or actually, I could take everything out of the sidebar.php. I could take the search field out. I could delete the entire content, and then index.php will still look for sidebar.php, but it'll just have no content. It'll be an empty box.
But if you just took out that one line that says get
Exactly.
sidebar, it would be gone.
It would never look for it, and then I could
Right.
have a 1-column layout.
Right.
Or I could have a 3-column layout by, you can actually add a second sidebar, or I could just subdivide either one of those containers with another div.
thank you. And we have Martest, some MAMP questions. I'm a web designer. Would this setup differ if I were working on multiple sites on the same machine, or would that be too difficult?
As long as they were, they had different root folders, it'd be fine.
Okay.
So you could work on multiple sites on the same machine.
Could you use MAMP by configuring the htdocs location to another location on your machine?
Absolutely, you can pick any folder on your machine.
Okay.
I just like to use the htdocs because it's in the MAMP folder. It helps me get organized.
And from Zippool, are you in, when you are in MAMP, can you play around with plugins at the same time?
I haven't tried that. Can you? Okay, yes you can. So you have to download the plugin, drop it into your WP plug. Let's look where plugins go, because that's a great question. You would, because I'm used to putting plugins in up on the server side. You would go into your htdocs, your WP content, and there's a folder called plugins. As long as you downloaded them and put them in here, then you can activate them in your WordPress admin control panel on your local machine.
Excellent. Can MAMP reside on an external hard drive?
Yes. Haven't tried it. Don't see why not.
And if you create a new sidebar div, how can you edit it to be used with widgets? That's from Ray.
I don't think you can, if you just make a div, I don't think you can put widgets in there. I think you need the functionality, the PHP functionality that comes with sidebar.php in order for widgets to be active. There's some PHP code in there that basically says allow widgets. So making your own sidebar might not allow that, unless you know what you're doing with PHP.
And Ray2481 asks, do you recommend resaving your themes as you make changes?
I recommend resaving everything every 30 minutes with everything I'm working on these days. I believe in version control. Save often enough so as to not thwart yourself. Know yourself and your limitations.
From HTML5 Live, is there a chance of MAMP and server-side not having the same features, so you test on one and it works, then upload and it doesn't?
There is a chance, but I think this is more dependent on which version of WordPress you're using. For example, if you were running WordPress 3.0 and WordPress 3.2.6, or you had a plugin that wasn't ready for 3.0, you might have a problem. But I think everything that you test on MAMP is going to work up on the server, because unless we're talking about like the difference between like a Linux and a Windows server, but you don't know. You don't know? Obviously somebody's going to break something. In the broad universe of possibilities, something's not going to work. but I think you can feel confident going forward that most of what you do on MAMP is going to work up on your web server because it's replicating a web server environment on your machine. They shouldn't be radically different. It would be the isolated incident. Yeah.
And from Kayak Yak, when you are putting div IDs in the PHP calls, do you include the header of the PHP page code or just the body?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I understand the question.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't understand the question.
She doesn't understand the question either. We're going to have to punt on that one.
Sorry, Kayak K. We need to have a little more information on that before we answer it. So how about our WordPress sites viewable on mobile phones as well?
Yes. Anything that's any mobile browser which can surf the web can view a WordPress site. There are a whole bunch of mobile themes coming out right now, so you could install a theme that's mobile friendly. Your site is currently at the mercy of the browser. And there are there's a dozen different mobile browsers out there, so they might be rendered differently depending on which browser. But the same things that we were talking about at the end of the bootcamp class and what they're talking about in the HTML5 class right now, CSS3 media queries, if you understand how to use those, you can write a different style sheet for mobile devices, and your WordPress blog can be recontextualized to fit on a mobile device and look better. And I'm guessing there's pre-made mobile themes which are taking advantage of just that.
Thank you. Eric from Wilder Goose, any difference working with WordPress and WAMP or MAMP between CS4 and CS5?
No. Do they mean Dreamweaver CS4 and CS5?
I would imagine so.
I had Dreamweaver CS4 and CS5 both open today and was working with both of them, one locally and one remotely without any trouble, and moving my files back and forth.
Does he normally use from Mike Schnickel, does he normally use dialogues to insert divs elements just for the show?
Yes. If you're a hand coder, go right ahead. But I help it. It's a visual step, which I think I'm just accustomed to doing.
And Eric, thank you. Do you plan to cover any e-commerce themes in the class at all?
No, that's outside my area of expertise.
Okay. Sorry. Can you edit a widget style?
Some widgets are editable and others are not.
And can you give us from McDowell, can you give us a little bit of an explanation of how you would use version control in WordPress?
Version control meaning the versions of WordPress, or just version control in terms of what I'm building?
I believe it's as related to what you're building, how you're saving out versions.
Save out a folder with your changes every hour, every day, or whatever's appropriate for your workflow. When I was rebuilding my website, I would say, and I had a lot of jQuery going on, I had, when I finished work at the end of the day, I would just save it in a folder called dev, D-E-V, _8 _12 for August 12th, so that when I began work on August 13th, if I broke anything, I could always refer to the folder from the previous day where I knew everything worked. So the more complicated your coding, the more frequently you need to save. And just do the entire build in a folder, even if it seems like a lot of replication of unnecessary files, because you can always go back to a working version. For some people that means every half hour, and some people that means once a week.
How much you want to redo.
Yes, or how much can you afford to lose?
Thank you. There's a question from MIB. I want 2 separate blogs running on my one domain, but different subfolders. Do I have to install 2 separate databases?
Yes. And I can actually show you an example of that because I actually have that working right now, and which gives us a preview of what we're going to be building soon, towards the end of this class. Actually, I have 3, don't I? Wow. Here's erikfadiman.com/blog. Here's erikfadiman.com/live, what I built for today. And here's erikfadiman.com/broadspeak. And this is actually an entire website built on WordPress, and you can't tell that it's a blog. This is what we're going to be building in weeks 3 and 4. So I have 3 separate installs of WordPress running on my web server. I have 3 different databases, 3 different WP config samples that I had to do, but they all seem to get along harmoniously because they all each have their own login name, and nothing has caused conflict for the others. Kevin?
Question from the studio?
Yes. I guess for me, this begs the question of what's the definition of a blog then?
And that's kind of what I was opening on my opening slide. What is a blog? WordPress is a great blogging platform. It is also a great content management system. And while it's tempting for us as designers to say, let me build you a blog, how can I charge $1,500 to build someone a blog when they can get a theme for free or a premium theme for $75? Your advantage as a designer is to say, I can build you your website on a blogging platform, and they will have their own WP admin screen that they can log in and change all this content so it turns into a CMS. We hide the blog and make it appear as a CMS. And that's why we wanted to do WordPress, because it's so versatile.
So for our purposes, the aspect of a blog that's important is the CMS
Well,
abilities of it.
if you wanted to build a blog, build them something that looks like this. These are called posts. WordPress also has the ability to hide the blog and build something called pages. And we're going to start distinguishing between those next week.
Excellent. I'm excited.
And you just answered a question from the internet, which was if you add a third sidebar, how do you, your client, edit the content in that new sidebar?
I mean, like if I've taken away WP login,
Correct.
we just go wp-login.php, and if you know your login info, you can get in.
There's a question from MIB. Do you ever use the check-in function in Dreamweaver?
Only when I'm working on a team or when I'm having a split personality. If you have a coworker who you can't trust, even if it's yourself, use the check-in and check-out feature.
Thank you. And there was a lot of comments about Firebug and potentially using that.
Absolutely. I didn't get to Firebug today. So as we were going through all of this, what I really should have been doing is to have installed Firebug, not on Safari, but they have their own version. Yes, so Firebug can't live without it. So what Firebug will do, I don't have it installed right now, I can hover over any element, and Firebug will tell me what its HTML and CSS is, how to identify it, and then I can make changes. I can do my deductive work much more quickly.
Thank you. And Ollie asks, is it easier to create your own templates from scratch, like Starkers, or build from another?
It's easier to build from another. I can't imagine doing this any other way than to start with Starkers, because I can't possibly convey to you how to write this PHP by hand. Use someone else's PHP, and what we're going to do next week is we're going to take a finished HTML and CSS design, we're going to break it up into 4 PHP pieces, and then we're going to inject some PHP into it. So we're the reverse engineering of what we did today. But we do it this way first so that you can understand the ecosystem, and then but I'm still going to be copying and pasting PHP into that. If anybody knows how to write their own PHP, they probably shouldn't be here. They shouldn't be asking me questions.
And I guess that sort of covers, it says, in these 4 weeks, are you going to talk about template?
Yes.
Good
A
answer.
vague question gets a vague answer.
And that's a good one. Ray asks, if you use permalinks, can you easily move the blog up 1 level?
Yes.
Eric, will you be going over multi-sites, LV asks?
No. We only have 4 weeks. I'm actually going to build 3 sites in 4 weeks. I can't get any better than that.
Technical question from Callie Beth. When you've been working in a subfolder and then take the site up to the route to go live, Dreamweaver asks whether to update the links. Do you?
Yes. Although WordPress functions on a lot on absolute URLs, so there's less danger.
Do we have any more questions in the in-live studio?
I probably can't handle your questions.
Do we get a preview of next week, Eric?
No. You got a preview of weeks 3 and 4 because I have those built, but I don't have week 2 built yet.
Okay, well, that is the end of our questions. Well, no, I'm sorry. We got a couple more coming in. Can we do, MB asks, can we do vanity URLs in WordPress?
Yes.
And does Safari have something similar to Firebug?
Yes, it's called the developer toolbar. Safari view, where is it? There's a where is it? If only Craig were here, he uses it a lot. Well, I'll find it for next week. There is something just like Firebug in Safari. It's called Inspect Element. But I can't find it right now. Yeah. Show develop menu in menu bar. That's it. Now develop. Here we go. There we go. That's it. That's the Firebug-like thing. The develop menu in menu bar in Safari. And now I can hover over all these things and it does just the same stuff that Firebug does. I can isolate where the header is. I can isolate where these things are. I can look at the resources, the scripts. I can see how fast the page loads. I can look at the CSS. There's more information than I could possibly know what to do with. I think that was... Yes, timeline is really neat because I think now if I do refresh... No, it's not giving me some info. Well, somewhere here it shows how long it takes to do everything. But you guys didn't come here to watch me click this.
From the internet, an apology for a silly question. A person came in late. Is this for WordPress blogs hosted on WordPress, or is this for custom blogs on your own domain?
This is all for custom blogs on your own domain. If you have something hosted on WordPress, you have a lot less control. I'm assuming if you're hosted on WordPress, you're there to blog and you're there to use a default theme. If you're hosting it yourself, I'm assuming you want to build a blog for yourself or someone else.
And McDowell asks, how do you compare WordPress with Joomla for website content, not for blogging?
Joomla is a great open source content management system. I found it too complex for me to understand, so I went over to WordPress. I have a web developer who I work with. We collaborate on some of our projects. She can do Joomla in her sleep. She thinks it's so easy. She's like, come on, you just do blah, 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 blah. Just type, type, type. And I'm like, you lost me at type. But Joomla is a great system. It's free. It's open source. It's great for integrating a CMS into your site. I think I can get something up and running faster in WordPress. But that's me.
This is a question from your host, your chat host. At FontFace?
At FontFace. You can use at FontFace syntax, Google Font API, Typekit. You can embed all those fonts into your WordPress blog. And we'll do that next week. Navenna? Hand Navenna the microphone.
We have a question from the studio audience.
I just wanted to ask, how would you go about getting the blog into your website, integrating it with your website so that it uses the same styling that you use in your website to make the whole piece cohesive?
You mean kind of like this? That
Yeah.
that this.
How would you go about that? Because it is exactly.
So how does this look like this? And where Nevena is one of my students at Seattle Central, and why is it that my Seattle Central page looks the same as my blog page? I once I finished building it, I copied the style sheet and moved it into the WordPress location for the style sheet, and then built it along those style sheet lines.
Okay.
So build the site first and apply it to WP, or take the style sheet from what you built in WordPress and apply it to the rest of your site.
And
But it's
could you have two databases working? One is your site and one is your blog.
yes, you could.
Okay.
And actually, even though the styling here is identical, I have two copies of the style sheet, one for the blog and one for the site, just in case, because I'd rather play it safe. And I could actually be running this on WordPress, and I could be running this on a different installation of WordPress, one to be a blog and one to be a site, and you'd never know the difference.
Okay.
And actually, my goal is to move the whole site into WordPress, because I read a great quote somewhere the other day that says, at a certain point, if you're spending more and more time writing code to update your site than you are putting content into your site, you're wasting your time. You need to somehow use these tools to streamline your workflow.
Thank you.
Over there, Nevena?
Are you going to talk about the databases behind your blog?
No, because I don't know much about databases.
But you had to build something.
Oh, well, I just went to my control panel and figured it out, and I went to .5. I clicked on their database tab. You mean, would you want me to walk through how I did that?
No.
All I did was give it a name and add a username and a password. It was pretty unglamorous.
Okay.
I don't know much about databases, so I'm only a designer.
Eric from the internet, looks like we have about 6 minutes left. Says, will he go over the placement of the footer and sidebar divs in the PHP pages again?
Right now?
Do we have time for that?
Absolutely.
I think that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm looking now. I'm going to close this out and close it. I'm going to look at Starkers 2, the finished theme with the Seattle skyline in the footer. I'm going to say open. MAMP, htdocs, WP content, themes, Starkers 2. Footer.php, and this is important, and file, open, index.php. In this file, this is one thing that I didn't make clear. Look at that. There's my container div, and there's my footer div. So in this finished project, and let's go look at that in the browser for a minute. I guess I have to go into Starkers 2, don't I? Change my theme. Switch to Starkers 2. Activate. Return. If you look here, I have a full width footer. So a footer that can go beyond the boundaries of the container. If I had a tiling graphic, if I make this smaller, you can see that my graphic is like 1600 pixels wide, wider than most monitors. The way I did that here in Dreamweaver is here's the old position of that container div. I just moved the footer outside of it. So the container gets drawn like this. The PHP still calls the footer. The footer still has one div in it, ID footer, but the style sheet here going to CSS and layout.css. If we look at the style for the footer here, you'll see that it has no width. Because it's outside of the container, it is not held to 960 pixels. It will always go full width. And because it's at the bottom of the container, unless I have a really short page, I'm going to have a sticky footer that's always at the bottom. So the container is pushing it down, and its lack of a width is opening it up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Couple of questions about Tumblr and expression engines and how they fit into these.
Boy, both of those are on my to-do list. So Tumblr is sort of like... Ah, yes, thank you. Tumblr is a free blogging platform which is, they've kind of stripped all the hard work out of it. It's the easiest way to blog, I hear, that you can just sort of email yourself stuff and you can just, it's more of a, you can type and upload images. It's a super easy blogging platform. I'm guessing that you can, there's also custom themes for Tumblr as well, but I haven't learned how to do those. And what was the other one? Posterous is the other one, yes.
In fact, you can use Posterous themes and import them in.
Yeah. Posterous is even easier because I think Posterous is the one where you can you email to an email address and it updates your blog right away.
Albums.
Well, thank you.
Oh, an expression engine was the other one that you mentioned. That is also a CMS platform, which is supposed to be super easy to learn and good, equally as robust as WordPress. So that's on my to-do list, is to learn expression engine, because I see a lot of great sites being built with it. And it's easier for the designer to use and easier for the client to use, is what I've heard. So Tumblr, Posterous, and Expression Engine, all worth looking into. They're on my radar. I hear good things about them, but I haven't built anything with them yet.
All right. Well, thank you. Just
welcome.
like in the Matrix, I know Kung Fu. Thank you to Erik for a great class.